There should be more focus on the product, the service itself. Just spend less time in meeting rooms, less time on PowerPoint presentations, less time on a spreadsheet, and more time on the factory floor, more time with customers. I mean, a lot of the time, the best thing that government can do is just get out of the way. I think it's incredibly important that government focus on incenting the outcome, not the path.
A couple of days ago, Elon Musk did an interview with Wall Street Journal and they talked about Silicon Valley, government oversight, and a whole lot more. His answers were not the usual answers you'd hear from other CEOs. I watched the interview a few times, and throughout the entire conversation they had, there was an underlying theme that Elon's answers were following along. His forward and out-of-the-box thinking may surprise you if you don't know Elon by now, but suffice to say that everything he said makes a lot of sense, which is a big reason why his companies such as Tesla and SpaceX are doing so well. So in this reaction video, I'm gonna go over the key points of the interview. You can watch the full interview from the link in the description. Now let's begin. Hi and welcome to EV, source for all things EVs and technology. Following Elon and his journey with Tesla and SpaceX has not been short of excitement and surprises. By now, Elon is perhaps one of the most well-known people in the world. This latest interview shows once again what a great leader he is, and why many people choose to work for his companies. His thought process and worldview makes so much sense. I just wish one day I get the chance to talk to the man himself. But enough about me ranting about Elon, let's just jump straight to the interview.
I mean, you've spoken often in your career about how important it was for you as a young entrepreneur and innovator to come to America. And you've said there's no other country where you could have achieved what you've achieved today.
Definitely.
When you look at the US today, the landscape, would that still apply in 2020? And are we broadly as a society doing everything we should be doing to foster that same environment that brought you here?
Yeah, well, I think U.S. is still great with respect to innovation and fostering entrepreneurship. Still great. I think we don't want to be complacent, and we want to say, okay, how can we make it better over time? And I think we want to be cautious about the gradual creep of regulations and bureaucracy. Rules and regulations are immortal, and if we keep making more every year and do not do something about removing them, then eventually we will be able to do nothing. This is very important, and I think not well appreciated. This is sort of like the slow boil of the frog. You know, his frog doesn't jump out because it gets just slightly hotter each year. We should be aware of this, I think, particularly at the state level.
I have to jump in here and say that I find his way of thinking and looking at things very refreshing. And he's absolutely right about the rules and regulations. They're good up to a certain point, but over time as things progress, some rules that were set decades ago will inevitably slow down their progress. So while I agree rules and regulations are necessary, they need to be updated and changed as the world changes and moves forward. The next question was about what should be the right role for the government when it comes to fostering new innovation. Let's have a listen to what Elon said.
A lot of the time, the best thing that government can do is just get out of the way. And so I'd say that's the default, probably the best thing to do. Then after that, it would be ensuring that there are not artificial monopolies, that there is a fertile ground for startups. And because what can happen over time is that you can get regulatory capture by large companies where they influence the regulators and the legislators to favor their situation. And then you have a forest of redwoods. And you just can't, the little trees can't grow. So we really want to have an environment that tends to favor smaller companies and startups. The big companies really don't need the support, but they will generally try to work the system to establish a monopoly of some kind. We should be wary of that.
So in a nutshell, governments should just move out of the way of innovation and support small startup companies, because the bigger companies don't really need government support. They can take care of themselves. And beyond that, governments need to prevent artificial monopolies from forming. A lot of the time, companies and industries tend to work with regulators and have people lobbying for them to form protective barriers for themselves that ultimately lead to monopolies that are always bad for the end user, i.e. the customer. There are many examples of this throughout history, but one that I can think of right now is what's happening in my own neighborhood here in Vancouver. When buying car insurance in British Columbia, you only get one choice, ICBC. This is government-controlled car insurance that doesn't allow competitors. Over the years, this has led to ridiculously high premiums when compared to what neighboring provinces such as Alberta are offering. So this monopoly is hurting the customers with high premiums and with no other choice because there is no competition. Competition is always good for business and for any industry. It motivates the business to do better with its products and services to stay in business. But when you eliminate competition altogether, you create a monopoly that is easy to handle, but bad for business and customers. This is what can happen when we let the government take too much control. When monopolies are created by law, this literally slows down or even stops innovation, which is what Elon Musk is trying to fight for. The next question he is asked is about new national industrial spending policies that Biden is planning on doing when he gets into office. So let's have a listen to what he said.
It's government's responsibility to establish the rules of the game and then ensure that those rules are properly enforced. Like sort of like the referees on the field, and it's like football or something. Then you got the rules and you got the referees. You got to make sure the rules are the right rules and the referees are enforcing the rules. I think that's an important role for government to ensure that the rules are correct and that the incentives are what we actually want them to be for, like I said, the long-term maximum happiness of the people into the future. Where I think government does not do a great job is when they want to not just be a referee on the field, they want to be a player on the field. This does not end up in a good situation.
Picking winners and losers, that kind of thing.
Effectively, government incentives do favor. Like you're going to say, like, what are the rules of the game? This is obviously an imperfect analogy, but I do think it is a pretty good one. That you want the government to be carefully focused on ensuring the rules of the game are what we actually want them to be. That we're getting rid of old rules. This is very important, which is not occurring. And that the rules are enforced such that we have ethical behavior of companies.
This one I think is very important. The government should make good rules and make sure they are being followed, but not to make too many rules that can negatively impact progress. Another thing that he touched on was that governments should be aware of outdated rules, which is what I mentioned earlier in the video. As things progress, as companies get bigger and better, and as the world moves forward, our outdated rules should not follow. They should go with the change. In other words, outdated rules need to be updated quickly so that they don't act as brakes for innovation. And guys, if you're enjoying this type of content, please hit that like button to help YouTube algorithms recommend this video to others who might be interested in this topic. Now, let's jump back in.
Now, there are times when you have an unpriced externality, such as the CO2 capacity of the oceans and atmosphere. So then, if that is not priced in effectively, then you can get behavior in industry behavior that we think is arguably not good for the environment or not good for the future of the planet. Most of the time, provided pricing is correct, you will see correct behavior from private industry. So that's like one example where if we effectively price carbon, we'll see the right behavior, and then the government does not need to try to pick technology winners and losers. They can simply incent the outcome. I think it's incredibly important that government focus on incenting the outcome, not the path.
This one is great, and I think what he's proposing here should have been implemented a long time ago when we first started talking about climate change and how our activities are affecting the environment. Pricing negative externalities properly, in this case carbon, would have a positive outcome. You see, the free market will automatically correct itself over time, and the government can just simply move out of the way once they've set the pricing for all negative externalities. And as more businesses adopt the new ways for obvious reasons, the competition will drive the prices down even further while improving products and services. This follows the same theme Elon is set on throughout the entire interview, where the government just sets the rules and then gets out of the way. The next question is regarding California and the problems that they are facing there.
First of all, Tesla and SpaceX obviously have massive operations in California. In fact, it's worth noting that Tesla is the last car company still manufacturing cars in California. SpaceX is the last aerospace company still doing significant manufacturing in California. So there used to be over a dozen car plants in California, and California used to be the center of aerospace manufacturing. My companies are the last two left. I want to emphasize. So that's a very important point to make. For myself, yes, I have moved to Texas. We've got the Starship development here in South Texas, where I am right now. We're hopefully going to do a launch later today. And then we've got the big factory development just outside of Austin.
That Starship launch, by the way, did finally happen this last Wednesday, and they were very successful with it, even though the rocket ended up exploding upon landing. If you're anything like me, then you watched the live stream and got very excited watching it fly. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly suggest you watch it. I'll leave a link in the description.
Yeah, I think California is great. So there's a lot of things that are really great about California. Obviously, it's the biggest economy in the country, most number of people. I do think that there is something that happens when, if it's, go back to the sort of sports team analogy, like if a team has been winning for too long, they do tend to get a little complacent, a little entitled, and then they don't win the championship anymore. So California's been winning for a long time. And I think they're taking it for granted a little bit. Yeah.
So California has been doing well for so long that they are essentially becoming a large company that stops growing, doesn't innovate, doesn't promote innovation, doesn't adapt to new situations, which in return is causing them to lose their edge. It's the same as a large company that stops focusing on its customers or products, but focuses more on keeping the shareholders happy. In my opinion, part of this could be due to the increased regulations on businesses. The next question is about innovation in the corporate world and whether or not big companies are approaching innovation correctly.
Well, I think there's innovation, but then there's also just our CEOs in corporate America focus enough on product improvement? I think the answer is no. And I think generally my advice or my recommendation would really be spend less time on finance, spend less time in conference rooms, less time on PowerPoint, and more time just trying to make your product as amazing as possible. And the company will take their cue from that.
Why is that? Is that because boards or shareholders are too finance and return focused and don't think enough about product as being at the heart of value? Is it because a certain kind of the skill is cultivated? Why is that? Why is that a problem in the C-suite?
I think there might be too many MBAs running companies. There's the MBAization of America, which I think is maybe not that great. There should be more focus on the product, the service itself, less time on board meetings, less time on financials. The financials come as a result of, like you say, like, what's the point of a company at all? And why even have companies? It's like a company is an assembly of people gathered together to create a product or service and deliver that product or service. And sometimes people lose sight of that. A company has no value in and of itself. It only has value to the degree that it is an effective allocator of resources to create goods and services that are of greater value than the cost of the inputs. This thing we call profit is should just mean over time that the value of the output is worth more than the inputs.
And it's a reflection of the quality of the product more than. So if the product is good, presumably the profits follow rather than profits being involved versus profits. And
yeah, sometimes it's people sort of have it backwards, and if people are getting sort of the incentive structure is coming from the financial side of things. I don't know. I just earnestly would recommend to anyone listening that just spend less time in meeting rooms, less time on PowerPoint presentations, less time on a spreadsheet, and more time on the factory floor, more time with customers. And obviously a lot of people out there are already doing that, but I would just urge people to say, like, hey, step back a second and say, is your product as awesome as it could be? Probably not. What could you do to make it great? And if you like think about innovation, like maybe it has to be like breakthrough innovation. I don't think it necessarily has to be breakthrough innovation. It's just like, just make your product better. This is the thing that really matters.
This definitely is the thing that matters. A product mindset is very important instead of a financial mindset. Because look, at the end of the day, if you really think about it, a business is nothing without its products or services. Take away these two things and you're left with just the business, which in itself is not doing anything good for anybody. Somewhere along the way, as companies grow, they tend to lose sight of what's important. And I know this from a personal experience with a large company I used to work with a long time ago. I was with that company only for 2 months before I decided to leave, but during those 2 months, I got to witness corporate bureaucracy and rules that, in my honest opinion, was just too much. For someone who was supposed to learn about the company's products and services, I ended up learning about the company and about its procedures for the first 2 weeks, before finally getting a PowerPoint presentation of a few of their products. I think they made simple things more complicated than they needed to be, and this almost immediately made me question the company's structure and goals. That type of corporate environment just wasn't for me, so I left. This is why Tesla and SpaceX are doing so well. They've eliminated all the unnecessary things and are laser focused on the product, constantly innovating and trying to improve the product for a better customer experience. This is the kind of long-term thinking that will continue to propel Musk's companies forward. This is the right way of doing business. And as he said, stop focusing on the finances and focus on the customer and the product. The finances will just simply follow. It's this kind of thinking that most corporate leaders are lacking. You don't need an MBA to understand this stuff. Anybody who can think rationally can learn this quickly. Elon Musk has set a clear path to success, though it's not an easy one. It's one that works for those who are willing to put in the hard work. I've said this before and I'm going to say it again. If you're a car company trying to become successful or stay in business in the near future, then all you have to do is follow Tesla's footsteps. Most of Tesla's patents are open source, yet I still don't see any real competition coming for Tesla. The only one that seems to actually challenge is Lucid, and we've already seen how Elon has been trolling them with the price and range of its Model S versus Lucid Air, which is very close to Tesla's specs and price. Though Lucid has not produced a production vehicle yet, they're getting very close, with production starting possibly as early as the end of December or early 2021. In this next part, Elon really drills his points in. Let's have a listen.
Basically, just be like an absolute perfectionist about the product that you make, the service that's provided. Seek negative feedback from all quarters. From customers, from people who aren't customers, like, hey, okay, what can we make this? How can we make this better? I think it's absolutely learnable. And just if you find yourself spending a lot of time in getting presentations and reviewing spreadsheets, you're barking up the wrong tree. That's the effect, not the cause. So just get out there on the factory floor, get out there in the stores, talk to customers, think about what would you love to have. Oh, and sometimes I think, and I've had this conversation at Tesla a few times, where it's like we're trying to think, okay, it's at times like we don't love this product, but we think others will love it. That's not really how it works. If you don't love it, don't expect others will either.
That is so great. How can you expect others to like your product or service if you don't like it? Another thing I liked that he said was seeking negative feedback. Many people still don't realize how important and valuable negative feedback is. It's almost like a shortcut to learning things about your product and service that you can improve to make it better. Okay, let me ask you this. How many CEOs do you know that have regular interaction on Twitter with their customers? It doesn't matter how much money you spend on research and development, it's never going to be perfect. There will always be something to improve, and a lot of times these improvement ideas can come straight from the customer. This next part is very interesting, where Elon was asked about his mistakes and what he has learned from them. So let's have a listen.
Well, some of the things I mentioned just before, it's like where I was recommending that people spend less time in a conference room, less time getting presentations and spreadsheets, and that generally that's like when I have spent too much time in a conference room, that's generally when things have gone awry. And when I go and spend time on the factory floor, or really using the cars, thinking about the rockets, it's like that's where things have gone better. Well, there's a lot of talented people at SpaceX and Tesla, and I think the morale is good. I for sure respect them greatly, and it's an honor to work with them. And I find that if I'm engrossed in the details of the issues, this does not result in them feeling better, but worse, but feeling better. Like they're in my experience, more energized. It's like, if you think about like war, it's like, do you want the general in some like, ivory tower or on the front lines? Like the troops are gonna fight a lot harder if they see a general on the front lines than if they think generals, in some cushy situation. So it's like nobody bleeds for the prince in the palace. Get out there on the goddamn front lines and show them that you care and that you're not just in some plush office somewhere.
This one really drives the point home. We all know Elon Musk is very passionate about his work. He even sleeps in the factory sometimes, just like he did a few days ago in Giga Berlin. His personal involvement is exemplary, and anyone working for him must be feeling inspired by him. To those of you who consider yourself leaders, here's a real leader sending a good message to the world and setting a great example of great leadership. I sometimes see questions in the comments like, what would happen to Tesla without Elon Musk? Well, firstly, may he be blessed with a long life, because people like him are not very common. Honestly, I don't know what would happen to Tesla if Elon just suddenly disappeared from the picture. But look at what happened to Apple after Steve Jobs. The rate of innovation has pretty much stopped since then and are currently still floating because of their large fan base. Alright, that's all I have for you guys this time. You can watch the full interview from the link in the description. But before you go, what do you think about the points made by Elon? Will businesses do better with less government involvement? Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. Once again, we are at the end of the video, and if you're still here, you are amazing. If you own a Tesla, get 10% off on your accessories when shopping at Abstract Ocean with the code EVSource. Also, don't forget to check out our merch store for shirts, hoodies, and more. And if you would like to show more support for the channel, consider becoming a patron and get access to exclusive content such as Q&As and behind the scenes. But in the end, the best form of support is having you watch and enjoy these videos. And of course, a shout out to our patrons you see on the screen, and a special shout out to our power producer Inku Kang. Thanks for watching. My name is Harry and this is EVSource. Keep charging ahead and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe and take care.